Hi, I'm Tim Zacharias with Cougar USA and your host of Building Value. This week, my guest is Matthew Pryce with Centrotherm. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to speaking with you and spreading the message of safe venting.
There we go. We're going to be talking about safe venting, like you said. We're also going to be covering his unique perspective to the HVAC world from his past in radio and music, and how their business has been affected during COVID-19 and how it's going to look going forward.
On Building Value, we go behind the scenes at some of the most iconic buildings in Texas to showcase the incredible people that design, build, and maintain them and their impact on the community.
Well, cool. So can you tell me a little bit about where you grew up?
So I was born in New York City, and I grew up basically in and around New York City. I was born in the Bronx. When I was
Awesome.
about elementary school age, my family moved to New Rochelle, New York, which you may have heard in the news recently because New York State is like sort of the COVID epicenter in a lot of ways. And New Rochelle, which is, I say New Rochelle, it was one of like the patient zero, whatever. The house I grew up in was in like that little radius that they kept on showing.
Oh, wow.
So my dad's, who still lives there, was in there. Thankfully everybody is seemingly okay. And I guess we're starting to taper off here in New York, or rather the rates are slowing, I suppose.
Sure.
But yeah, I grew up in Westchester, New York, just bordering New York City. I spent a lot of my formative years in and around New York City because it's the closest place to go to do everything. So, and I went to college, undergrad and grad school in New York City. So that's where more or less my roots are, where I'm from, and a lot of Yankee Stadium, early days, the original Yankee Stadium. And then I moved upstate to be with my wife, and that is where I live now, on the other side of the river from Albany, where the Centrotherm manufacturing facility is, in Rensselaer, New York, which is just right over the bridge, and you're right into Albany. So right by the capital.
That's cool. And I would say you maybe have an atypical path into the HVAC industry as an English major in college, and then going into the radio world. Tell me a little bit about your time at the in radio.
So I've worked at a couple of radio stations doing a handful of things, producing. I've been on air. I've done interviews just like this. I've written copy and scripts. I've done piecework. I produced like a package that that they press play on, and then there's like 3 minutes of produced audio that they play as a clip. I've taken phone calls. And then when I moved up here, I started working at WAMC, the Northeast Public Radio. That is the NPR affiliate in the Capital District of New York. They service, Western Massachusetts and down the Hudson Valley and the Adirondacks and stuff like that, and all the way up to, I guess, the Canadian border. I was a producer of a module on there. The Academic Minute, it's called, still going strong. And, 5 years on at this point. We would just, my job was pretty much to do everything but the actual speaking. The guests of that show were all college professors discussing their research. So I would coordinate with them, help them record they call it the minute. It was about 90 seconds, and they basically had to summarize their stuff. It's about 250 words or so to get into a 90-minute clip. And then they would take it to me, and I would cut it up, and I put some intro music, and I would, make 5 of them a week, and did that for about 1.5 2 years before moving on to Centrotherm and marketing the pipes, complete 180 degree career shift.
Yeah, definitely a big change from the radio world into HVAC. So how did that change happen?
Well, the public radio is not well funded. So if I wanted to, get a house and things like that. Got to start moving up a little bit. I mean, all things considered, if I, which is an NPR joke, by the way, all things considered, should that have, I might still be doing radio if it would have been able to provide for me some of the things, that I was looking to do, but there's not a lot of growth opportunity at that particular radio station as well. So you start looking around, and marketing was I had been doing marketing whether I knew it or not for forever as a musician. As a I had to market that segment to radio stations throughout the country, actually the world. And I did all the flyers, and I wrote the copy that went on social media. So I had been doing it. So it was a natural fit when Centrotherm needed someone to do a similar thing, except for HVAC equipment. So, I mean, the biggest challenge for me was, of course, learning a technology and working in an industry that I had zero familiarity with. I am not a Mr. Fix-It guy. You could definitely ask my wife about that. She, I make things worse. I want to help, but I'm not good at it. And I would never try anything with like a car or like gas lines or anything. I would not even, I can hang up pictures. And that's where it stops, right? Working, having to learn about heat exchangers and fan coils and how heating systems work and how ductwork is laid out in a house, and all the other related stuff, fuel gas codes and things like that. I mean, that was where the main education for me really lied, and then really helped sharpen the things that I do. I had, and have grown, but I had the skills with the Photoshop stuff and Illustrator and making video content and writing, of course. I have a graduate degree in English, so writing press releases and stuff. My one my weakness in that respect is that I write it often like a poet, and my bosses are like, my technical writing isn't nearly as strong because I write it in a way that's so flowery in some ways that it's like, let's get rid of all of this really interesting and descriptive language that nobody really wants to read. Let's get to the point here. So one of the things that I'm working on is how to word installation instructions and stuff like that, because we don't need a missive, like a Proust meditation on how to turn a screw into, with a screwdriver. Just like, put point A, point B, just get to it. All right. So.
Yeah, I struggle with that as well. Usually when I have like a stream of consciousness or I'm writing out an idea, whatever, it ends up being pages and pages, and then I have to go back and try to, pare it down into a lot less words. So definitely feel you on that. And I know it's difficult sometimes to keep in mind who that end audience is when you're putting that together, making sure that writing it in a way that they want to see it, right?
Absolutely.
So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, in HVAC, a lot of this content needs to be, the ad copy and social media you can get a little playful with, but certain things need to really be straightforward. And I have to remind myself that, the audience isn't here to be entertained in some respects. There's a fact or a bit of information that is trying to be transmitted, and anything that beclouds that is just distracting from the ultimate goal of the writing. So,
but I think you do bring a unique point of view to the HVAC world, having that outside experience. But any things things that you've seen in the industry, or things that you've maybe done a little bit differently at Centrotherm from based on your background?
Well, I mean, certainly being able to play on social media with certain things and use Photoshop to my advantage, and use it in a way that's not just, Photoshop can be used for all kinds of different things. Photographers use it to touch up color and, remove blemishes on skin and stuff. I use it to make funny photo hunts for the newsletter that we put out monthly. I use it to make a unique add-on for a PowerPoint that illustrates the theme of the slide, whether it's a little guy holding up a large pipe to indicate that, this pipe is lightweight, or something along those lines. But I think that there's a creativity that comes with personality like mine that isn't always present in this industry. I think that's changing. because I think, the world is kind of getting smaller, and I think more things are sort of hybridized, and a lot of people have like many roles across the job. But certainly when I look at things like, and I read newsletters and e-blasts from other manufacturers, or value-added resellers, wholesalers. There's, for lack of a better term, it's a little plastic sometimes. There's a lot of just straight product information. It can be a little, I don't know, more fun, I suppose.
Sure. No, I like that, injecting the fun and some of the cartoons and humor, like you said, it definitely changes things up a bit. And like you said, I think in general our industry is changing. I mean, if you look at the makeup of people, especially say at AHR Expo this year, that expo looks totally different than it did even 5 years ago. And so, but it's a good thing because a lot of, especially on the trade side, a lot of people are starting to age out in our industry, and that challenge of getting that younger generation interested in HVAC. I think this is the type of content that's going to help do it. So
Absolutely.
So can you, let's talk a little bit about the products of Centrotherm. So we're really excited to be working with you all now here for about 6 months or so, really starting to get some product out there and getting good feedback from customers. But you just talk a little bit about the InnoFlue product and, its advantages over, say, PVC.
Sure. Well, so first and foremost, it is polypropylene, not polyvinyl chloride or, CPVC or stainless. No, polypropylene is just a different polymer. Ours in particular is fire rated to 230 degrees, or rather the operating temperature is 230 degrees. That's a lot higher than alternative plastic vents. So that's really where the main advantage comes in. And as such, we're able to be tested by Intertek and listed to UL 1738, which is the applicable special gas vent standard. And that really gives that peace of mind, knowing that our vent systems are tested and have passed things like UV stability tests for outdoor sunlight exposure, impact resistance, load bearing tests. It's a very, very rigorous test to pass. So to see that Intertek mark with that UL code on it, you sort of know you're getting something that's been engineered for that particular application, which I think is key, because we know very well that people improvise in the field, and certainly I've seen an untold amount of photos of high efficiency appliances vented with something that can't withstand the flue gas temperatures, which could unfortunately lead to some very, very tricky situations, or even fatalities. So so we're a special gas vent that's engineered for that product specifically. It's not being used on that product just because it's available tubular or something that could potentially push some carbon monoxide in outside of your house. It's engineered for that, and as such, the mixture of products is very robust and comprehensive. And with all of our different elbow types and our condensate management components, really have a customizable and complete, from adapter to termination, special gas vent system that goes from 2-inch diameter to 12-inch diameter, with some concentric options, with flexible options as well. Naturally, there's some ins and outs on how all that stuff goes together, but really it's a comprehensive, tested and listed special gas vent polypropylene system. And that's the one thing that it's been designed to do. And we like to think that we do it very, very well.
Yeah, I think there's some really unique components to it as well. I mean, you mentioned some of the special adapters and things like that, but even just the way it's engineered so that the 90s aren't actually 90s, right? So that you get that slope, and then
absolutely
the connection, the way that it goes together, and it can move and be redone, things like that. What are some of those kind of things that y'all have done to engineer the system that's going to make it quicker and easier for the installers out in the field?
Sure. So, I mean, a couple of those things, you mentioned a couple of the components. Some of that stuff is designed in particular to make that make sense. You alluded to our elbows, which are not true 90, so they're not like a flat perpendicular angle. They're actually 87 degrees, which means that there is a 3-degree pitch built into the system when you start doing it. If you're going up, and I can do this because we're on Zoom and you actually see, if I had elbows here, I'd actually show you, but like straight up, the actual 3-degree pitch will help the system manage those condensates, and they will drain back where they're supposed to, instead of just hanging out in a perfectly horizontal, vent, which would lead to corrosion and eventual vent system failure. In addition to that, we have things like test ports and branch tees for common venting, and support boots, and a whole host of components that are just outside of the standard male fitting kind of system that allow it to just sort of come together as a whole. You don't have to drill your own holes for a drain. We've got that condensate piece. We have a siphon that all works together with the 32 millimeter drain or 30 millimeter drain. I'll have to check on that. So it all comes together. It's built to go 1-to-1. With the pitch built in, you don't have to think about that anymore. It's just done. You buy the support clamps and they come in the box. It's like, oh, how am I going to support the system? Well, you've got them all comprehensively. So you lay them out, your system is supported. And again, you alluded to the way that the pieces actually come together. And that's really the main speed savings there. So alternative vents, you need to prime, get your solvent chemical out and uncap it and spill it all over the end, and wait, and then put the glue on, pot them together. In theory, you're supposed to wait 24 full hours before that whole system cures and dries before you fire up the appliance. Now, we know people just flout that rule all the time, but in theory, you're supposed to, according to the manufacturer. InnoFlue, on the other hand, is socketed. So instead of male-male, it's male-female on every piece. It's a gasketed system. EPDM directional gasket forms that tight seal. So with just a little bit of lubricant, you just put them together, just like Legos, more or less, and you're ready to roll. In the smaller diameters, as part of the UL listing, you do need a connector ring, but in the large diameters, the socket is deep enough that connection will hold without a connector ring. So glues and primers, that's not a thing anymore. It's just a push fit connection, and the amount of time you save per fitting, even with the people who are really adept at those glues and primers, I mean, there's still just the amount of the time to uncap something, you're done already by pushing it together. So I mean, there's a tremendous amount of labor savings, not to mention how much lighter it is compared to some other vent materials as well.
And you have a great video demonstrating that, right, in real time, side by side, trying to do PVC versus the InnoFlue.
It's actually even a little further, a little beyond a standard installation. We showed there's a time trial of a apples to apples common venting, so a cascade system with multiple appliances tethered together into one more efficient manifold racking. And I mean, it took him about an hour with the glues and primers. And this is a guy who knows what he's doing. It's not just some some schlub off the street. It's a fellow who knows how to install this stuff. About an hour with the glues and primers, and about 15 minutes just fitting together the polypropylene in a flue. So I mean, that's what, 1/5 of the time.
Yeah, it's significant time savings for sure. And I know a lot of these jobs, if they're in an existing building, this may be something being done after hours. So to be able to shorten up that time on the job is significant. And so we'll have a link to that video in the description. It's a pretty stark comparison when you're seeing them side by side like that.
Absolutely. And future listeners of Cougar USA's podcast and video channel, stay tuned for the Kevin Sponable episode a little bit down the line here. He's our commercial sales manager, and he'll have, that's going to be for the technical guys, the engineers and stuff. He's got the further science stuff and the technical stuff that will go beyond what I can talk about in terms of the features and benefits on the engineering side of the coin. So that's a plug for future episodes here.
Awesome. Always got to be promoting. I love it. And the other thing that I think is a really nice addition to the engineering that y'all have done is the VentBon software that you've just kind of come out with. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. VentBon is proposal software. They're a partner of ours who work with us on our price list and certain technical elements like pitch, like the quantities of support clamps and connect rings, to help calculate and produce a bill of materials and a 3D model of what a potential vent system layout will look like. So the process essentially is contractor in the field has an installation that he needs to get done. He might have a blueprints and great a really really complex looking system, or he might just have like a sketch that he drew on a napkin somewhere. Mostly, if we have all the details we need, we can work with either of those. But he sends it in, and Kara in the inside sales department. She can take that data and then plug in a few numbers here: the diameter, the lengths, the direction X, Y, and Z, particular adapters for an appliance, any accessories and termination selections you want. Then you hit and the system spits out a 3D model and a bill of materials that can be its own proposal or joined into a larger bid if you're bidding on if a company or an entity has a bigger proposal in the works with maybe the boiler as well, with the gas lines, and who knows, there's a million ways it happens, but it's in the very end, the end product is a short and clean proposal with all of our part numbers on it and the way they go together in a 3D form. It's pretty sharp looking, and we like sending those out. It's a really clear picture of what you get and what it should look like when it's all said and done.
Yeah, that's great. That's something that we'll definitely work with the contractors on to gather that information that you're talking about, and then be able to put together that bill of materials. And we know that things don't always translate exactly from the drawings into the actual installation. So we are inventorying the InnoFlue and as much of the fittings and things that we can, so that we'll ship out that bill of materials as designed, and then also have some extras there for any.
Yeah, that's the good strategy. And of course, I always recommend, especially if there's some, sometimes what you're up against, and other times there is a bit of a guessing game. A few extra elbows on hand, a few straight pieces on hand. Everything, the straight pieces can be cut to length. So, if you just have a couple extra, you can work around obstacles or unplanned stuff, assuming you have that material handy. So it's always a good idea to have that.
Yeah, I think, even on new construction, when things are laid out nicely on paper and then you get out on the job and it's like, oh, I didn't see that duct on the drawing. So you're gonna have to go around that bad boy. So yeah, definitely can have a few changes along the way, but it's a great piece of software to be able to initially design it, size everything, get it, hopefully most of the way there, and then give them a good blueprint for installation.
Well, I'll be doing another VentBon training, probably not this week, but probably next week, sometime towards the end, do a webinar on what that means, because we do encourage folks in the field to do their own if they can.
All right. So, whether it's specific to the InnoFlue or just in general, what any sort of advice would you have for installing contractors or property or facilities managers around their gas-fired equipment and any safety things like that?
Well, there's a couple of, those are two different questions. A contractor versus a facilities manager. So
we can talk about it separately. Sure.
I would say contractor guys should always read the installation instructions. We recommend that you read the installation instructions, and just in general, I think it's a good rule of thumb: familiarize yourself with the products you're installing. No, I think, and that's sort of a humorous one. Our product is pretty easy to go together, quite honestly. I'm certain people have put it together without opening the book. Not that that's maybe the best practice, but I'm sure it has happened. No, safety-wise, I think the best thing the wisest choice for both of those subgroups is to know what your local codes are. Wasted time at a job site because you have done something that gets tagged by an inspector is a real no-no. having a issue that is a life safety issue is a tremendous liability concern. Not to mention, you don't want that to happen, period. But knowing the codes that are on the books is always going to help you, because they're in place largely for those particular reasons, to protect you and to protect the homeowner, let's say, or the folks who live within the facility, or the workers at the factory where you've done it, et cetera. So familiarize yourself with the gear and know how it all works together and know what the law is.
How has Centrotherm been through this COVID-19 pandemic?
So we are an essential manufacturer. So the facility hasn't stopped producing. We have some pretty sharp folks at the top, and that's in North America and also globally. And they did see this a little ahead because of our global connection, you know what I mean? So they saw, because it wasn't, US kind of came in the second wave of the news of this, I suppose, with China obviously being first. But we upped our inventory levels to start off with. We grew it to make sure that we had, if there was a worst case scenario type of thing. But we have folks at the plant right now. I mean, typically we were at maybe 35 to 40 on-site warm bodies, with a majority of that being manufacturing and warehouse. We have since moved most of the people, I don't have a welding machine in my house, so like to do welding, you got to be but the marketing guys, accounting and sales and things like that have all been able to sort of transition to a remote VPN based kind of situation. And we have put some distancing and some of our own policies in place about who enters the building, if anybody. Sure. That includes drivers. So they're being very attentive to it, and making sure that contact is limited or nil. And I personally am, pretty adept at the technological stuff. I know computers well enough. I can navigate, Teams and Zoom and go to webinar and all these other, so that hasn't been a terrible learning curve for me. But that's what we're also doing on the other side of the stuff, is doing our online trainings and conducting a great deal of video conference calls instead of the conference room. But having colleagues in Europe and also having outside staff, this is not new. We are always doing this type of stuff, because no two of us necessarily are. I mean, a majority of us were always in New York, but we would very often be having calls with folks like yourself. Our customer base is all throughout North America. Our vendors are global. Our parent company is global. So when I need to do something that has to do with the website beyond small changes, I need to patch in with the international marketing manager no matter what. So whether it's video, whether it's WhatsApp, I'm communicating with Martine, who is in the east of Holland. Or one of my colleagues is working. We work directly, very closely with Centrotherm Brilon. That's Germany. So they're forever doing quality stuff and doing video updates with it. Its potential to be all over the one fella is in Germany, the other one's in the Netherlands. It's a sales guy who's on the road, and an engineer who is in Albany, and it's all four of those guys patching in from different parts of the universe almost. So it's, that element hasn't been too much of a hurdle for us, although I imagine there are some companies who have really struggled with it, because going from 0 to 100% is a lot more difficult than what we did, which was using it constantly all the time already, to everybody uses it constantly all the time now, instead of just, if I had to go meet with accounting, I don't set up a Zoom when the office is down this thing. I stand up out of my chair, I walk down the hall, and I say, hey, can we discuss X, Y, Z? And, we do that in, face to face, just because of convenience. Now, type. Hey, bring them up on the call. Hey, this invoice, blah, 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 and we just do it like that. And it's further away and, out of sneezing distance. So, it's interesting. I mean, the transition for me has not been terribly difficult. But I'm certainly sympathetic to many people who have all kinds of issue. I mean, I'm very lucky. The internet in my house has been good. You know what I mean? So my wife is working upstairs right now, presumably on her own video calls and doing, a similar thing. And we haven't had too much of an issue. We are getting ShopRite delivery or no, I'm sorry, like grocery curbside later tonight. So rather than go pick off the crackers off the shelf that I want, I have to like think about them all ahead of time and order them and like shopping cart it like it's Amazon, so it's fascinating. But you evolve, you adapt, and we'll get through this, and eventually things will get back to some semblance of normal. I don't think everything will go back to the way it was.
Right.
But some, obviously not being able to go out to a restaurant. We had that conversation just, at the very beginning of the top of the hour here. Can't do that. I can't go sit in a restaurant, so one day.
Yeah. And, we're lucky that everybody is healthy and we've been able to pivot as well. We had a couple of things in place before this started, like the Zoom and Slack and other communication tools and the VPN and everything to kind of make that transition a little smoother. But it's definitely been a disruption in terms of how we do business, but we've been able to keep doing business, like you said. So definitely feel blessed there. And, looking forward, like you said, I think we are going to be figuring out what that new normal is. And Texas maybe a little sooner than y'all up there in New York. Hopefully you are past the peak, like you said, and starting to move towards opening things back up. So what do you see, you said Centrotherm's already been doing a lot of these things, but what do you think business might look like in our industry going forward?
Well, I mean, there's certainly a lot of projects on hold right now. Something that's, I guess it's, for us, it's maybe not great, but I don't even know how to really angle this sentence, but like it's not cold anymore, right? We're a heating company, right? So should this have happened as we marched into November and we're staring down the barrel of, December, January, February, that's when there's a lot of stress on boilers and heating systems. That's when a lot of residential stuff gets replaced. That would have been a really fascinating, residential business is not good right now as a result of these distancing orders and self-isolation and all that sort of stuff. But if your house was 11 degrees and you had and you had kids, you got to figure this out. Something it would have been a very interesting, completely separate set of circumstances if this happened, in over the winter. So, yeah, I feel like the hopeful thing would be, we see a bump in the fall or in next winter as the residential projects that were lived through perhaps or put on hold or canceled for now. I was like, can we get through another year with this crappy furnace? Whatever. Maybe they come around in a cycle and next year residential is up because there was such a downturn for a period of time. And other than that, I think, commercial side stuff has been sort of muddling on and sort of getting done slower, but still happening. So, I think there'll probably be another influx, there'll be another quick growth period of new projects getting started or the hustle to complete them. They have been put on pause or, it's hard to predict, especially now, because this is month, or it's about to be, I guess, in theory, month 3 of this. I feel like maybe I think my first quarantine week, let's say, was like mid-March. So really it's like 10 weeks instead of not quite 3 months. But we don't know what the endpoint is, it's amorphous. It's still moving. So it'd be hard to predict anything. Then all of a sudden, there's another sweep of this, and the orders are even further locked down or something. I mean, that's like obviously like worst case scenario, but I mean, it's too early to even predict, I guess. I mean, I'm just trying to do my part by not really having much of any contact with anybody. My wife and I are together. Our rabbits and chinchillas are upstairs. And then other than that, the only people that have like really been, no, I don't think anybody's been in the house. The mailman comes, and we've had occasional like deliveries, and we go and pick up the grocery order. And that's really been it. So,
Yeah.
trying to do our part to not spread it around again. And we're both young. I think we're pretty low risk factor for morbidity or whatever it is. We'll probably we would be okay, but of course I wouldn't want to not know about it and then go wander around and then give a training to 30 people somewhere.
Sure.
Or go to a committee meeting of something and then it ripples out. I mean, that's the real concern, I think. So just obey the isolation orders and see what happens when it happens.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up the residential side. For us here in the South, that's not necessarily the top of mind thought for boilers is the residential heating. I mean, I think there is a little bit of it here. Even, I think it is actually way more comfortable than forced air heating, but most people here have that. So in commercial buildings, we are using the boilers for comfort heat, but a lot of the applications that we're using this for are going to be for the domestic hot water. But the product there works equally as well for both applications. But I could definitely see your point that people, especially now they're in quarantine and have an issue. It's even compounding.
It's a unique I mean, it's a separate subset of actual end users. The guy who, I mean, you could have a fleet of four vans. You could have a big a big heating company in this, in wherever, name it, right? And and you're still going to the FW Webbs of the world. I don't know if you know FW Webb down in Texas. You're still going to Ferguson or Win Supply in the morning to load up on your vents and your elbows and your that kind of thing. You're picking up what you need for that day's job. That's the kind of residential kind of thing that we're talking about here. The larger scale industrial projects and stuff like that, a lot of those are still moving forward little by little, or just going on, you know what I mean? So
yeah, construction here has been deemed essential, and so it hasn't slowed down, thankfully, for us. And new construction is still moving. We do have some job sites where they've restricted access and things like that, which is completely understandable. But like you said, hoping that as we move past that peak, that we can open this thing back up in stages. But I do think we're going to see some changes to quote unquote business as usual going forward. And like I said, I think we'll continue to do the Zoom trainings and webinars, things like that. We'll be able to collaborate with manufacturers like yourself, where we can do some kind of unique training through this format that would be a lot more difficult to do live. So it is going to be interesting to see kind of what is in the days to come, months to come. So, all right. Any other thoughts for you? And we covered kind of the whole gamut here.
There was a lot there, they say. Yeah, no, I mean, we, I guess I have new product information. I don't know if you saw my email this morning, but
I have not had a chance to look at that one.
So if you'd like to take a quick look, we just came out with these guys.
Oh, I did see this. Yeah, the longer links.
Yeah, so these are brand new. It is 10-foot, 10-inch diameter vent lengths and 9-foot effective lengths in 12-inch diameter. There's the 9-foot versus the 10-foot is relative to the socket size and how we can ship them on pallets and stuff like that. So rather than make them 10-foot effective, and then require customized pallets to deal with the necessary socket size. We just said 9-foot, and then they ship standard. So anyways, those are out. They come in pallets. They are ready to go. And that's the new news at ye old Centrotherm.
All right. And I noticed the weight on there, and that was one thing that we didn't talk about earlier, was how the InnoFlue compares to PVC in terms of weight.
Yeah, I mean, it's tremendously lighter. It's very thin wall. So, I mean, one of our reps, famously, it's like almost like a cartoon, but he carries with him a 12-inch diameter 87-degree elbow for the very express purpose of making people touch it and lift it, because it itself, I mean, it's a fraction of alternatives. I mean, certain vent materials don't even go up to 12-inch diameter, and then when you lift this, I mean, it's a huge thing. A 12-inch 87 is like, when it stands off the ground, it's like almost 4 feet tall. You know, it's a massive pipe with a massive bend, and you can still just kind of just handle it really easily. Whereas, I mean, you need 2 guys for certain vent materials out there. So yeah, the weight is something that we're doing our part to save the contractors back.
There you go. Saves on shipping and everything else too. So that's
all that too.
That's great. Awesome. Well, any other last thoughts or anything else that you think of that we didn't cover today? We kind of went through a little bit. All right, Matthew. Well, I think that wraps up our episode for today. Really appreciate you coming on the show. Enjoyed our conversation. Got a little bit of everything in there today, so that was fun. And want to thank everyone for listening to this week's episode, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Building Value.